All right, and welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're talking about the Washington Commanders making some possible offseason moves and just really what the Washington Commanders should be prioritizing. So, checked out this article. This is on Bleacher Report. I think that this is a solid article as far as what direction the Washington Commanders should be going in, and it starts with the biggest weaknesses for this team. And so, it starts with number one being the defensive tackle. And so I do agree with that because defensively, when you look at this team, I think that if you're able to generate a lot of pressure up front, you're able to generate a lot of natural sacks and things like that, not have to call blitzes. I think that that's a plus. I think that anytime that you're able to generate pressure like that naturally and not have to call blitzes, I think that that puts your secondary in a good situation because, well, the opposing quarterback is always under pressure, and then you're probably going to force them into mistakes more than likely there. And then next, you're going to be able to flip the field. So I think that, yes, defensive tackle is going to be important. And I think that defensive tackle is certainly important for a team that has just been getting gashed by the run. And so the Washington Commanders certainly must address the defensive line. It has to be something that is a priority. And I do think that that absolutely is something that you want to do. And so I do agree with that being number one. All right. So number two, they put offensive tackle. And so this is where I have a little bit of a debate depending on just how tough it has been for the Washington Commanders in the secondary. And so here's the argument for it. I think at offensive tackle, you see what you have with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is a special quarterback, and I think that, we clearly see that he's a franchise quarterback, and finally, it looks like the Washington Commanders have got it right, and they have finally found a franchise quarterback. This is something that I've literally talked about and just have not I just couldn't understand why the team couldn't find a franchise quarterback. And so finally we have one in Jaden Daniels. And so you do want to be able to protect him. I think that certainly that's what you want to do here. Look, I think that as dynamic as Jaden Daniels is, he also, is going to need that protection. And for a team that likes to run the football, you need to address the offensive line because they are going to be able to really open up the running room for our running backs out here. And I think that that's probably been a huge difference for this team moving forward in this season is just that it's had an identity. So an identity, number one, of running the football, which I think that this team needs to continue to build off of. And number two, you need to keep Jaden Daniels protected. So I see why that could be number two, even though I think defensively is probably the biggest thing for this team. But I think that I can see where they're coming from that. Next, they put wide receiver. And so, again, I think that you probably push the defense up instead of the wide receiver position, but we're going to talk about why and how they can get some help with the wide receiver position. But yes, wide receiver is something that you do need. We haven't seen a whole bunch of Luke McCaffrey, and so that's one of the things that I wonder, will he start to trend a little bit more upward in this next season? I think that he's done a great job as far as probably developing with this team, even though we haven't seen him get a whole bunch of receptions. But what I see on game tapes and also to what I'm seeing some of the things that he's doing out there on the field, I think that there is a point in time where maybe he does push through. He becomes, a valuable player for this offense. But right now, for the immediate, yes, we probably do need a wide receiver. Can you get one in the draft? You can. And there's going to be options for this team in free agency, which we're going to talk about via this article, which makes a good point. Next up was safety and cornerback. And so, look, we know that the secondary is something that the Washington Commanders need to fix. They've given up splash plays. And I think that when you get Marshawn Lattimore out there, we know that that's going to help you. I think that Mikey Sainristil has done a terrific job. I think that the Washington Commanders really hit on him, which is great, considering that they moved on from Emmanuel Forbes Jr. And so now I'm saying that we need to get another corner out there, especially with some corners that are probably going to be exiting this year. I think that, yes, you probably do need to go out there. You need to get a corner. You need to get some safeties back there. You need to get a secondary that is going to be able to take that away from an offense, because right now, it's the opposing offenses have been getting some free money on us out there in the secondary. So we definitely need to clean that up. And so I think that 4 or 5, you can flip that either way, but I also think that they probably should be flipped maybe upward. Maybe that should be 3, 4 as far as the priority and the biggest weakness for this team. And so next up, talks about the biggest extension and it talks about Bobby Wagner, which I've talked about that before. Look, Bobby Wagner doesn't look like he's slowing down. I think that this is a player that you certainly bring back for a 2-year deal. I don't see him slowing down. I think he could play another 2 seasons for you. And he's been an extension of Dan Quinn and this defense out there. So we need that out there. We need these players, or this player, excuse me, mainly to help this defense and continue to transition as we continue to really build this team up. I think that Bobby Wagner is a player that should be extended going into the next season. So next up, we're talking about the wide receiver, and I said that we were going to get into it, but I think that they bring up a good point here in Chris Godwin. So I think that Chris Godwin is a player that you want to bring up because I think that he's absolutely a player that the Washington Commanders should go out there and get. I think, with this team currently projected for $100 million under the cap, barring he's had the injuries, I get that. As long as it's not something that takes this team over the top, I think if you don't make a trade and you don't go out there and get somebody in the draft, I think that Chris Godwin would be an excellent player to really help stretch the field with Terry McLaurin. Because when his time with the Bucks and playing with Tom Brady, one thing that he showed me is he showed the ability to go over the middle of the field. And so being that type of player and not just being a deep threat, I think that definitely works with what Terry McLaurin would want to do. And so hopefully he's able to come back from an injury. But I do like this as a free agent signing. If you were to go out there and get him at this point at 28 years old, I think he still has a lot left in the tank. So I think that is a terrific possibility for the Washington Commanders. And so next up, they talk about the NFL draft. And I talked about the secondary and just really having to go out there and really fix that. And so, with the secondary, I love the fact that you would go out and you would get Jahdae Barron. I think he is listed as one of the top corners right now in college football. And when I looked at his tape, he reminds me a lot of Mikey Sanders still. The way he comes up, the physicality, the way he comes up and run support, and then also too, his ability to go out there and find the football in coverage and things like that. I do like him as a player that would certainly fit with what actually was Joe Witt's Jr. And then also too with Dan Quinn in their system. I think that he fits that defensive system. And so I certainly think that the Commanders should possibly go after a player like this, especially when you're trying to change the identity of this team. And I think that you need that extended physicality. And so, yes, I do think that this is a player that you go out there and that you possibly go ahead and get in the draft. And so anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this recent news here. Do you think that, yes, the Washington Commanders should go out there and get Barron from Texas in the draft? Do you think that maybe Chris Godwin is a good pickup for the wide receiver position if this team doesn't go get one in the draft? And lastly, as far as these rankings, let me know what you're thinking here as far as the Washington Commanders' biggest weakness. Is it just like this 1 to 5 with the defensive tackle, offensive tackle, wide receiver, safety, and cornerback, or should it be flipped? And so anyway, we'll be talking a little bit more about the Washington Commanders. This is Rico. This is Washington Commanders Insider. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.